Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Today I've got a mate on Rhys. I'll introduce you to Rhys in a second, but first I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm calling you in from. I'm here in Bourbon Q on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. And I just want to acknowledge all the young people coming through because they're going to be our heroes and our leaders and our warriors that are going to bring culture into the future. But today I've got a great mate of mine on Rhys. How are you?
I'm well, mate.
Good to see you. For people that don't know who are you, where you're from?
So my name's Rhys. I am a Dharawal Wodi Wodi man. I was raised on Ngunnawal country here in Canberra, and then did a bit of a trip around and got to experience a bit of culture all over the place, and have just recently come back and put my roots back in the ground here in Canberra.
Yep. So you said you were born in Canberra. Went up and finished
Oh, I
school.
was raised. I was raised. So I was born in Maryborough,
Oh, yep.
um, and then after a parent split, I ended up coming to Canberra.
Ah, cool. You finished high school in Canberra?
I did. Yeah.
You did, yeah. And while you're at school, how much Aboriginal studies did you learn at school, if any?
Ooh. um, so I in class, the extent of the Aboriginal studies that we got to learn about was the equivalent of watching Rabbit Proof Fence,
Yeah.
and that was about it. But then in later years, I did actually have a friend of mine who invited me over to, I guess it was like a lunchtime program where it was run by one of the arts teachers, and we got to do a couple of little bits and pieces here and there. We actually went to the National Museum for one of the First Nations displays that they had going at the time. So that was a little like field trip.
Yeah.
Um, but that was about it really. Yeah.
So you finished high school and then did you go straight into study or did you do some work beforehand or?
No, so I was a terrible studier, and barely finished high school at that. um, so from there, I think I did about 3 or 4 weeks worth of year 11,
Oh, yeah.
and then went a bit wayward. Um, yeah, just started looking for life experience, I guess you'd call it.
Did you ever get to what you wanted to do? Or are you still in the progress? Are you still a work in progress?
I think I'm always going to be a work in progress, but I'm loving what I'm doing at the moment.
Yep. What is it that
Yep.
you do? I know
So
what you do, but the viewers might not.
I work at a youth Aboriginal corporation called Goog Gulwin. We're based out of Canberra, and we support First Nations young people, families. We do programs. We get involved in events. We do a lot of advocacy work. It's a really amazing place.
Yeah. What do you like about working with mob?
Um, Look, I think coming from someone who I struggled a lot when I was younger, struggled just making friends, being accepted, I suppose. And I think my favorite thing about being with mob is that once someone knows that you are mob, there's almost like an instant connection that you get to have with that person. They generally feel a lot safer around you once they know. Um, and I think on top of that as well, I really like helping mob because mob needs help a lot of the time. So that's yeah, it's rewarding work.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of young people that you work with don't know much about culture
Yeah,
or their
absolutely.
family?
Yeah. I mean, it is dependent, but a lot of the young mob that we're working with, they like for example, I can give you we have a young men's group, and out of that we have 13 young men, all aged between the ages of 8 and 13. Um, and just yesterday, I had to go through their intake forms and figure out what their parents had put in for their mob because none of them actually knew who their mob was, apart from maybe one or two kids whose parents are quite involved.
Yeah.
Um, so I had to go through and I had to research who their mob was. I had to, put together little snippets just so that I can kind of help them understand not only who their mob is, but how to even just basic things like how to pronounce the name of their mob.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing about being able to work with young people because I think young Aboriginal people want to know, but they just don't know where to start to learn to know. If that
Exactly.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
It's not
So
like there's not a knowledge holder or an elder hiding around every corner waiting to jump out at you with wisdom.
yeah, it'd be great if every little Aboriginal kid came with a little booklet that actually had their life story in there. These is your ancestors. This
Yep.
is your community. This is everything you need to know about being an Aboriginal 101 uh, kind of booklet.
That'd make things a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've done a lot of travel around Australia. Where have you enjoyed living the most, and where do you feel most connected to?
Um, Look, to be honest, I think now that I'm back here in Canberra, I do feel the most connected to here. When I when I left, it was because I was an angsty teenager, and Canberra is boring. There's nothing to do here. Um, and so I just went around to small country towns, just wherever the wind took me. And ended up eventually, after many bad decisions and a bit of a well-traveled path, I ended up in Victoria and living in Melbourne for a little while. Realized that I didn't like the city and started moving out further and further. And that's where I came across Bunurong land. So I was
Yeah,
living and working in Inverloch and Wonthaggi at the time, which are two tiny little rural coastal towns just outside of Melbourne. And that's where I think I found my first real connection, because culture also wasn't something that I was raised with. It was very much something that I kind of had to discover along the way. Um, but that place in particular was where I first started really um, getting a feel for it, getting to understand how important it is, how powerful it can be, how much strength it can bring to you and other people.
yeah,
And I think that's another thing that I like working with Mob for, is that, I had someone who was able to bring that strength to me. I would like to be able to pass that on as well.
yeah,
So yeah, Bunurong land is probably where I first found that connection.
yeah. Do you find that it's hard to actually get to know mob if you're not part of mob?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could separate that into two different things, right? It's like, yes, it's hard to get to know Mob and to be accepted into Mob. But for me, a skill that I developed first was that I got really good at getting to know people. And so once I had that under my belt, I used that skill, because at the end of the day, I think that um, although it is good to be able to say that you are Mob, you're, part of part of the family. Um, you also need to be an approachable person. You also need to be a trustworthy person. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what color you are, you're still going to get told to F off.
Yeah, yeah. What makes you feel culturally safe when you go into an organization? And what does cultural safety mean to you?
Ooh. Um, Look, I think I have it pretty good here at Guggen, because, number one, everyone that works here is identified. We all, we all pitch in to help one another. Um, we all know. Also, we've all had experiences with racism, and know what to do, what not to do to make another black fella feel safe. Um, Cultural safety to me is just acceptance and knowledge seeking without making it someone else's duty to provide that knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. Another word that gets thrown around quite a lot is reconciliation. Like we just had Reconciliation Week not long ago. What does reconciliation mean to you?
Learning, truth seeking. Um, I could throw out all the buzzwords. I don't really know what it means to me, because I I don't think that I've lived the same a similar life, or the sort of life that a lot of our mob have lived, where there is that pain, there is that transgenerational trauma. Um, Reconciliation to me is definitely making up for past mistakes, but um, making sure that the same things don't occur in the future.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. And the other half, I think, too, is that it's not about me reconciling, really.
Mm,
It's about our non-Indigenous people reconciling. But I always believe the first part of reconciliation for anybody is we need to reconcile what one, reconcile our Aboriginality, but also reconcile, do we really understand history and how that actually impacts on people today?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that, when you look at reconciliation, being able to identify that, like, say for example, someone would look at, a black fella who's out on the street, might be having hard luck, might be speaking in a different way, talking in a different way, acting in a different way. um, People being able to recognize that that's not just because that person, made themselves like that. That is after generations and generations and generations of abuse and trauma, and that's something that that person is carrying with them from not just what their own life must have thrown at them, but from what their parents had to go through, what their great great grandparents had to go through. Yeah.
yeah. Now, do you,
Reconciliation would also be, yeah, I guess acknowledging all of that pain and being able to find a way through it.
yeah, do you find that it is hard for Aboriginal families to identify their Aboriginality at times?
At times, yeah, definitely. Look, I can. That is 100% something that I can relate to as well. I think giving a bit of my story here is, like I said, I wasn't necessarily raised with culture, but I knew that I was Aboriginal at an early age. Didn't necessarily understand what that meant, what that should be for me. But growing up through early years of high school in particular is where I started noticing it. All of the stereotypes, all of the bullying that came across because, that person's Aboriginal, watch out, they're, going to steal your left shoe, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Noticing that that was just attached to the fact that they had said once, or they might look Aboriginal. I'm a fairly white passing kind of guy. Um, that was never something that I was pinned with right from the get go. But I saw that happening to the other kids around me, and that was definitely a big deterrent for me identifying. And um, it's really sad because
yeah,
that was something that I missed out on through childhood. I think, it, I do feel a bit greedy for saying, but in the same token, I'm glad that I found culture at a time where I'm a little bit more emotionally mature. I was raised around it bits and pieces because of, for example, my mum played softball all her life. I was raised into softball, and we had an Indigenous softball team, or not strictly Indigenous, but like it was the Whispers. They're an Indigenous team mostly,
yeah.
um, and
What
that
a
was where
team! What a name! What a team name! The Whisperers.
the Whispers.
The Whispers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I was raised every weekend out there. There were always aunties around. There was a lot of jovialness as well. People looked after one another, and that was my entry into what I saw as culture. So just so you know, I am at work. So if you hear all my coworkers screaming and running around, someone's probably going to knock on the door eventually.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, that was my slow entry into it, and it was a good way to enter because there was that separation of, I can see the trauma over here at school, but I can see the joy and the love and the togetherness that happens here on the softball field.
yeah, yeah. Do you what? How do you? How would you define Aboriginal culture?
Oh.
I know that's
um,
a
yeah, I
big
was going to
concept.
say which one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um, I like to think that it comes back to sort of what I said earlier on, is that there is a sense of togetherness. So, people from all across Australia would be able to identify and say, although, you might be from Top End, or you might be from, you might be Noongar fella or something like that. At the end of the day, we're all one big mob. And hopefully that's something that we can all share and relate over.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's the togetherness.
Yeah. What what is it that connects black fellas to each other, would you say? Because look, recently I just came up to do work with your organization, and
Yep.
I was only there for about an hour before I felt connected. And
Yep.
it's a really weird feeling that I can't personally describe what it is, but within the first day I felt like I was part of your little mob up there.
Yep. I I loved that, by the way, because it was so noticeable. It was really, really noticeable. And when you first walked in and you were setting up your gear, and I was the only face that you recognized. I kind of said to myself, "I'll give him time. Like I know that I work with a good crew, so give him time. He'll open up and he'll be singing and dancing as he does." Um, and yeah, it didn't take very long, did
No,
it?
no.
I think that I was again, I'm going to go back to literally what I had just said, but I think it's that sense of like everyone has something to relate over when you're mob. And you kind of do feel a sense of family, especially when you're working it. Like, I think I'm speaking from a bit of a place of privilege because I work in a place where we all want to help each other.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, you're probably a perfect example. Didn't you find out that you're probably related to our DCEO?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So it is, yeah, it's just that feeling of togetherness and family that, yeah, that's what we relate over.
Yeah.
That and chances are that there's going to be some funny stories about the aunties and just some typical black fella yarns that go on. That like there can be a lot of lightheartedness. So yeah, I think that's definitely one of those things. I think that we're generally a pretty what's the word that I guess generally pretty funny kind of crew, aren't we?
I think we use our sense of humor a lot
Yeah,
to either to hide shame, hide embarrassment, to when we don't have words for things.
yeah,
Sometimes we're a culture that does use our humor a lot.
yeah,
Yeah. Do you have any Aboriginal role models growing up, or do you still have any role models now?
yeah. 100%. Look, I one of my role models growing up was oh, I have okay, and two main ones. One is my older sister because she, I mean, number one, she's my older sister. She was always the cool one. She was always the one that you got to look up to. But she also got involved in advocacy for First Nations people quite early on, and in some pretty big ways. So definitely her. But then also um, going back to the softball field, the uh, the the woman who owns the Whispers brand, I guess the Whispers team. Um, Her name's Jo. She was just an absolute beast on the field. All of her kids are absolute beasts on the field. She was a massive advocate. She did everything. She ran the team amazingly. She played for Australia, got to travel the world. Um, and then as a young person who didn't really have much apart from softball, that's a pretty big deal when you hear like, oh, this is taking her places.
Yeah.
Um, so, and that's like kind of coming back as well. That's the reason why I'm working here. So my role model really came through for me. Um, so definitely Jo and my sister. Um, Apart from that, no, I don't really think I had many Aboriginal role models
Yeah.
that I grew up with.
Yeah. Who do you admire now?
Or, um, I love a lot of our artists, a lot of our singers, because it just kind of comes with the territory of being a black artist, music artist, especially to be able to use your music as a voice for your people, as a voice for our pain. as a voice for what needs to change. Um, people like Briggs, like, Barker. Um, it's just, yeah, I love the idea of going into that kind of platform, getting listened to worldwide, and not just using that for your own fame, but also using that to be able to help out an entire culture, an entire, group of people.
Yeah. Do you think that lateral violence in mob is increasing, or do you think we are becoming much more togetherness?
I don't know. I don't think I've seen enough of Australia to be able to answer that question.
Mhm.
I I've seen a lot of lateral violence in some of the communities that I've lived in, and I've seen a lot of togetherness in some of the communities that I've lived in. I don't think that there's any, um, measuring stick that I could use to tell whether or not that's increasing or decreasing.
Yeah,
Uh, the unfortunate truth is, though, that there is lateral violence pretty much everywhere, and a lot of the time it's stoked by really terrible things, really, colonial idealistic things like money and land, that kind of stuff.
yeah. Do you what do you think's I'll ask you a different question. If I could give you a magic wand and $1 zillion and say you could fix something in Aboriginal affairs, what would you want to fix? Where would you start? I know that's a big question, right?
Mm.
But you've got zillions of dollars and a magic wand.
So it is a big question, but I'm gonna start really, really small. And um, I always, having been someone who worked in Parliament for a little while, I noticed the difference in the people on the ground who weren't being heard and the people up the top who were. Um, if I had a magic wand, I would wave it so that every single elder, every, mob, every mission, every small tribe, everyone who considers themselves their own little unit would have, a special microphone that they could speak into and have their voice heard.
That's good. What I like about that is it's like making sure that there's platforms for black voices to actually be heard. And some of the best leaders out there aren't people that stand up the front. They're people that create those platforms for other black voices to be heard.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's what I think you
summarizing.
do.
Sorry, what was that?
I said I think that's what you do. And you know, you probably don't even know that you do it sometimes, but you even the programs for young Aboriginal men, it's giving them a platform where their voice, their story can be told, or they can learn about their story, or you're putting them in a safe environment where you're allowing them to explore what their story could be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that. I feel very good about myself now. No,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're trying to do here. We just we above all things, we know that we want to help people, but we know that we just want to make a safe place for people to still be themselves here. I
Yeah.
think that's the main aim that we're going for.
Yeah. And I think it's really hard for our young people to sometimes understand what Aboriginality looks like, because there's the stereotypical, this is what, as an Aboriginal, this is what you should be like and this is what you should know. But a lot of our young mob don't know that, and it's not their fault that they don't know.
Mhm.
So how do we create environments where they feel comfortable in asking or coming up to you going, look, how do I find out more information? Where should I start that process? And programs like yours actually help people at least start that process as well.
Yeah. No, we definitely don't think of ourselves as the kind of people who can teach you culture. but we can certainly open doors for you to start learning about it yourself. Along the way, we're going to do what we can to make sure that you, as a human, are in the best place to be able to do that and do that safely.
Yeah. Looking back while you were growing up, what would have been something that would have been really helpful for you personally to connect more with your Aboriginality?
Hmm. Um, Me growing up to connect with my Aboriginal. I I don't really know because I would have loved a lot of really basic things. I would have loved how to learn, traditional fishing when I was a kid because I was always a really outdoorsy kid. But was always cooped up because it was so much easier to get that instant gratification of sitting down and playing Xbox.
Yeah.
Um, so those sorts of things, 100%, yeah. But um, learning more about the kind of spiritual strength that can come from our mob as well. Um, there was there was a really there was a really good story that I heard from one of the young people that I used to work with actually back in Victoria, um, who they and I were talking about someone who was being bullied, and they were being bullied in front of an elder. And so the elder was sitting there being quiet. And at the end, the young person came up and said, "Well, like, why didn't you say anything to that person who was bullying the other person?" Um, and the elder pulled the person who was being bullied aside, and then the kid who was asking them, and said, "The person's bullying you because they have a weak soul."
Yeah.
And that got me, like I really believe that that's the kind of spiritual strength that can come from learning those lessons and learning them early.
Yeah. When young people actually come to you and say, "Look, I want to know, I want to learn more," where do you guide them to start off with?
Back to their family. I mean, a lot of the time young people don't understand that they can talk to their parents about these sorts of things, and in the end, if their parents don't know, then keep on trying to look back down the line. um, and then if that's not working, then go for a blanket approach. Do just go and start looking for role models, looking for indigenous artists, authors, that kind of thing, and soaking it in that way. Then that's a lot of what I had to do as well.
Yeah.
um, I started kind of looking into um, a lot of different, like, I learned how to make a didge, and that was something that I ended up being able to supply to the kids at the school. It didn't work out super well because we didn't have a lot of funding, but um, making didges, making spears, these are all things that, although it's not specific to any one mob, any one clan in Australia, it's something that we can kind of all relate to and say this is ours.
Yeah.
Learning how to do, paintings, that kind of stuff. And I know that that's all very like low level things, but that's still something that you can use to say, this is my piece, this is my way in.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got two final questions for you. One is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? What would you like to be doing?
I think I'd like to be starting a family sometime soon, which is, big aspirations for a fella like me. I'm still, very, very much finding my feet. I'd like to be getting close to starting a family. I'd like to be looking down that avenue. Um, I think at the same time, I think I just want to find my place, and I think I've gotten close here with Canberra. I do feel very at home here. Um, but I think that, yeah, I hope that I hope that I can find somewhere that I can call my forever home.
Yeah. What is it about Canberra that you really love?
I mean, it's hard to get past the fact that I've gotten to move back. I live closer to my sister and my two nieces now. That's amazing. Being who I was never ever close to family after I left Canberra. And then, you know, I don't, you know, there were many years of gaps of where I'd not seen anyone face to face. So being close to family and having that connection has been massive for me.
Yeah.
Um, and not just that, but Canberra feels so different to when I was younger, but also different to every other place that I've lived. You know, I've lived in cities, didn't like them. I've lived in small towns. They're okay, but they're also small towns and not a lot to do.
Yeah.
Canberra has this perfect mix of like, you know, there's no matter where you go, there's nature. You know, there's always a nice long walk, like with trees over the top of you. There's the lakes, and everything is separated. Nothing feels too closed in around you.
Yeah.
No matter where you look, there's mountains. You know, I think it's Canberra is a city that has achieved a good basis between nature and city. Plus, Canberra's also been really good to me with this amazing job.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm watching the time, and we don't have much more time. But my final question for you is: what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
I don't know. I don't really think that I want to impose that view on anyone. Take away what you can. I hope I've been useful in some way. Love each other, I guess. Care
I,
about you. Care
that's a
about the
good.
next person.
I think that's a good. I think that is a good advice to give to people is to one think about what in every interaction you have with somebody, what do I walk away with?
Mm,
I'm a person that believes, people come into your life for a reason, and I need to sometimes work out what that reason actually was. And it might be, you know what, they are an F-wit
yeah.
and stay
Lesson
away
learned.
from them.
Yeah.
But I've learned that, or they came into my life to part this one little bit of knowledge onto me, and whether I see them again or not, they came into my life for a reason, and I'm not exactly sure sometimes what that is until I actually stop and actually have to do a little process analysis later and going, what did I learn from that?
Mm.
That's the reason that they entered my life.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even a process or analysis. It's the next time you experience that same situation, you know better because of the previous one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, hey, you know how much I love you and the work that you do. So we will always be in touch and we'll talk soon. But for our guests, we didn't actually tell them how we actually met. So how did we actually meet?
Yeah, that's so I started studying youth work in RMIT when I was in Victoria. And part of the Negara Willem hub at RMIT where I was studying pulled me aside and they kind of took me in under their wing. They like really took good care of me, made me feel like I was part of the family, which is everything that I've been getting at. Um, and they put forward an offer for all of the Indigenous students to study Aboriginal mental health first aid. Being a aspiring youth worker, I was like, of course, I'd like to do that. And so the person delivering it just so happened to be one of the most entertaining lecturers with a great sense of humor who made what could have been really boring material incredibly digestible and fun to learn about. And that person's name ended up being AJ. And after that, I was like, I got to stay in contact with this dude. And so in the end, yeah, I think I actually tried to get it delivered for the whole of RMIT, not just
I
the
think you
First
did.
Nation students.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't work out because it would have been a lot of money. But yeah, I kind of carried AJ's mentality and happiness with me for a great many years until I started working here. And then they said, "Hey, Rhys, do you want to put on some trainings for us?" And I was like, "I know just the guy."
Yeah. And I was there. I was there. It was great being up there last week, man. Hey, I'm just watching the time. I know you have to go. So, guys, thanks for hanging with my podcast. And Rhys, thanks for hanging out with me this afternoon.
It was awesome, man. Can't wait to see you again.
Yeah, love you. Look after yourself.
Love you, brother. Bye.